Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel Frontline News. Today we're diving into a shocking yet telling development in Russia's war against Ukraine, the deployment of old, rusting Soviet-era tanks and vehicles. This desperate move shows not strength, but the deep cracks forming in Russia's military machine. As the war grinds on, Moscow is scraping the bottom of its arsenal, pulling out relics from the Cold War era to fill the massive losses on the front lines. What's unfolding now isn't a story of innovation or progress, but of decay, desperation, and denial. For months, reports and satellite images have shown rows of Soviet tanks like the T-55, T-62, and even the ancient T-54 being pulled from storage depots. These machines, built in the 1950s and 60s, were once symbols of Soviet might. Today, they are little more than rolling coffins against Ukraine's modern anti-tank systems and drones. When Russia first launched its full-scale invasion in 2022, it had around 3,000 operational tanks. But after staggering losses on the battlefield, the Kremlin's reserve has been bled dry. Ukraine's precision strikes, drone attacks, and Western supplied weapons like javelins, N-laws, and leopards have turned hundreds of Russian tanks into smoking wrecks. Instead of replacing them with advanced new models, Russia has gone backward in time. The T-14 Armata, once paraded as the future of Russian armored warfare, has barely seen combat because of production issues and technical failures. So, the Kremlin turned to whatever it could find: rusted steel hulks that had been sitting in depots for decades, covered in dust and corrosion. Videos from the front lines show these relics breaking down after just a few kilometers, their engines seizing, their armor brittle and outdated. They lack the reactive plating and thermal sights that modern warfare demands. Against Ukraine's advanced weaponry, these tanks are nothing short of suicide machines. This is more than just a logistical problem, it's symbolic of Russia's entire war effort. The so-called second most powerful army in the world is now relying on museum pieces to fight a modern war. The image of these ancient tanks lumbering toward Ukrainian defenses paints a grim picture of the state of Russia's military industry. Western sanctions have crippled its ability to produce new vehicles, especially due to the shortage of high-tech components like microchips and optics. Every modern tank requires complex electronics, but Russia's factories are stuck using outdated technology. Meanwhile, Ukraine continues to adapt, innovate, and modernize. The contrast between the two armies couldn't be more clear. Ukraine is leveraging Western technology, integrating drones, precision, guided munitions, and real-time battlefield intelligence. In comparison, Russian soldiers are being sent into battle with machines older than their grandparents. There have even been reports of crews welding makeshift armor onto these old tanks, using spare metal and even logs in a desperate attempt to survive. It's like something out of World War II, not a 21st century battlefield. The psychological impact of this reality can't be ignored. When Russian soldiers climb into tanks that are visibly outdated, morale plummets. They know they're being sent into hopeless situations. Many of them are conscripts with minimal training, told to operate vehicles that often break down before reaching the front. This isn't a strategy, it's survival through denial. Moscow continues to project confidence publicly, insisting that everything is under control, but the scenes on the ground tell a very different story. Ukraine, on the other hand, has shown remarkable tactical evolution. It's not just about the weapons, it's about how they're used. From ambush tactics to drone-guided artillery, Ukrainian forces have turned precision into an art form. When these rotting Soviet tanks enter the battlefield, they are quickly targeted and destroyed. Footage shared online shows columns of old T-62s burning within minutes of engagement. The message is clear: time has passed these weapons by, and Russia's refusal to modernize is costing it dearly. The global reaction has also been telling. Military analysts around the world have been stunned to see how far back Russia has regressed. Countries that once saw the Russian army as a powerful force are now questioning its real capabilities. Even within Russia, whispers of discontent are growing louder. Military bloggers and even pro-Kremlin voices have started admitting that the situation is far worse than the government admits. They see the images of Soviet tanks being deployed and know that this is not a sign of strength, it's a symbol of decay. The situation also reveals how corruption has hollowed out the Russian defense sector. For decades, billions of rubles were funneled into military modernization projects that never materialized. Officials pocketed the money while the equipment rotted in storage. Now, that corruption is visible for all to see on the battlefield, where outdated and unreliable machinery represents decades of mismanagement. What was once hidden under propaganda and military parades is now exposed by the brutal reality of war. Even the logistics of deploying these old tanks are problematic. Spare parts are scarce. Mechanics trained to service them are long retired, and the ammunition they use is no longer mass-produced. Every tank that's reactivated is a Frankenstein's monster patched together from whatever components can be found. Maintenance crews are working around the clock to keep them operational, but the breakdown rate is staggering. Many of these vehicles never even make it to the front lines, failing en route due to engine or transmission failures. Meanwhile, Ukraine's Western partners are providing continuous support. Countries like the United States, Germany, and the UK have supplied Ukraine with advanced tanks such as the Leopard 2, Challenger 2, and Abrams. These machines are built for modern warfare. They have night vision, superior targeting systems, and thick composite armor. When these face off against a 60-year-old Soviet relic, the result is inevitable. It's not a fair fight, but that's exactly the point. Russia's decline is no longer theoretical. It's visible, tangible, and undeniable. This situation also sheds light on how Russia has been using propaganda to cover up its shortcomings. State media keeps pushing the narrative that old doesn't mean useless, trying to convince the public that Soviet engineering is still superior. But that claim collapses when viewers see video after video of these tanks being obliterated. Propaganda can't hide the fact that modern warfare is about precision, not nostalgia. Russia's attempt to recycle the past is backfiring in the most literal way possible, with tanks exploding on the battlefield. The strategic cost is also immense. As these outdated tanks fail to make an impact, Russia loses not only equipment but also valuable manpower. Every destroyed tank represents not just metal, but lives. The loss rate has been catastrophic, and even conservative estimates suggest Russia has lost over half its active tank fleet since 2022. The reactivation of Cold War-era vehicles isn't just desperation, it's a sign that Russia's industrial base can't replace those losses fast enough. Factories can only produce a few dozen new tanks per month, nowhere near the rate of attrition. Economically, the consequences are severe. Russia is spending billions to repair and transport this ancient armor, while its economy continues to shrink under sanctions. Skilled workers are leaving the country, and access to Western technology is blocked. The once boasted self-sufficient defense complex has turned into a slow-motion collapse. In contrast, Ukraine's wartime economy is being stabilized by Western aid and reconstruction efforts, ensuring its forces remain well-equipped. Even Russia's allies are quietly alarmed. China and Iran, while supporting Moscow politically, can see the cracks forming. They understand that Russia's reliance on outdated technology limits its military influence and bargaining power. Behind closed doors, even friendly nations are questioning whether Russia can sustain its war machine for much longer. When a supposed military superpower is forced to rely on rusted tanks from the 1950s, the illusion of strength fades fast. This entire situation is also reshaping how the world perceives modern warfare. The days of massive tank battles may be over. Drones, Precision missiles and electronic warfare have changed the rules. Ukraine has demonstrated that agility and intelligence can defeat brute force. Russia, still clinging to outdated Soviet doctrines, is learning this the hard way. The use of old tanks isn't just a tactical failure, it's proof that Russia hasn't evolved. As the war continues, the gap between the two sides is only widening. Ukraine's forces, supported by real-time intelligence and international coordination, are dismantling Russia's outdated tactics piece by piece. Every destroyed tank is more than a battlefield victory, it's a symbol of a collapsing empire. Russia may continue to send more rusted vehicles into battle, but each one only adds to the evidence that its military machine is falling apart. In the end, the deployment of rotting Soviet armor will be remembered as one of the most striking examples of how a superpower lost its edge. What was meant to project power has instead exposed weakness. The war has stripped away decades of illusion, revealing the hollow core of Russia's military might. No amount of propaganda or nostalgia can hide the fact that the Kremlin is fighting a 21st century war with 20th century weapons. The truth is painful for Moscow, but undeniable. Ukraine has obliterated much of Russia's modern arsenal, and now the world is watching as the Kremlin tries to fill the void with relics of a bygone era. These tanks, corroded and outdated, are more than just machines. They are symbols of a decaying empire, struggling to hold on to relevance in a world that has moved on. And as long as they keep rolling out onto the battlefield, they'll serve as a reminder that power built on lies and rust cannot endure forever. So when you see those old Soviet tanks trundling across the Ukrainian landscape, remember this: they are not signs of strength, but of desperation. They are relics of a past that Russia can't let go of, even as that past crumbles before the eyes of the world. And as Ukraine continues to defend its future, these echoes of the Cold War will continue to fall, one after another, until nothing remains of that illusion but smoke and twisted steel.